the related conversation that I wanted to have on this drugs thing is, at one end, we are a society moving towards depression, mental health,
Yeah.
sleep, and uh, probably anxiety are the biggest mental illness, seems to be the biggest epidemic that we have,
Yes,
right?
indeed. Yeah.
And clearly, if you take an industry like an antidepressant, which is a $17 billion industry, right?
Mm,
Which is really saying, you need to have antidepressants all your life,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
And that's really how you get addicted to the drugs
mm.
that you have all your life. You have a counter viewpoint on that, which is to say, you know what, there are other ways in which you can address this problem, and it's not something that you need to have this drug all your life. So, can you talk to me about your perspective on that?
Yes, well, you're referring to the fact that we have essentially come up with a new way of treating depression.
Hmm.
Traditional way, which has gone back now to the late 1950s, is to give a drug called an antidepressant.
Hmm.
Makes sense. But they essentially they rectify a depressive feeling when you take them, but unfortunately, when you stop, the depression can come back, or you can, in some cases, you can have withdrawal reactions. Uh, and over the last 15 years, as a result, emerging from the science we did, the brain science of psychedelics like magic mushrooms, we started to use psychedelics, particularly psilocybin, the active ingredient of magic mushrooms. We started to use that to treat a range of mental health disorders. Now, we started with depression, and the story is quite an interesting one because when I began to study psychedelics, I had no expectation that I might use them in medicine. I was studying them because I wanted to know what the psychedelic state was, because it was clearly a powerful change of consciousness, and no one had been able to explore it before because they didn't have the brain imaging techniques that we had.
Hmm.
And on top of that, these were illegal drugs. So most people
Yeah.
didn't have the courage or the tenacity to do it. So we did it. We did the first brain scans, ever proper brain scans of people on psychedelics. And we discovered that there are areas of the brain switched off, the areas that were areas which were switched on in depression.
Hmm.
And we thought, wow,
Hmm.
maybe a psychedelic can switch off depression. And then we did a study, and it did. I mean, a single trip produced long-lasting improvement. Some of our patients in that first study, which was over 10 years ago now, some of them are still well after 10 years.
Hmm.
It's because they've kind of worked through, overcome, their brain sort of reset. They're no longer locked into depressive thinking.
Hmm.
And that's actually really very exciting because now we have two different ways of treating depression. You can either sort of reset the brain with a psychedelic, or you can take an antidepressant. And we know from a whole series of studies we've done, these drugs work in very different ways, in very
Hmm.
different parts of the brain.
Hmm.
And in theory, patients have now got choice. Of course, in practice, they don't, because the psychedelics are still illegal and they haven't got a license, and it could be years before they do. But at least we're giving people hope.